This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Cloudera Government Solutions. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, a future vision for cyber at sea. The Navy's principal cyber advisor is here. The Defense Department aims to replicate success with AI, and data is at the heart of modernizing the government's people process. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. The Navy's celebrating a cyber anniversary. The service's Cyberspace Superiority Vision document turns 1 year old this month. Chris Cleary is Principal Cyber Advisor of the Navy. Chris, welcome. It's great to see you. When you and I talked about this document when it first came out, you told me there were 3 principles: secure, survive, strike. A year on, where do you stand with each of those in the Navy? Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you, Francis, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So the document is a year old, and it has gotten a lot of traction within the department. When we talk about those 3 principles of secure, survive, strike, I think a year ago when we had talked about it, the genesis of that is, traditionally when we would say the word cyber, it was always followed by the word security, and this always very quickly became, let's say, a zero trust conversation. And the idea behind this document was to say, there's more to the cyber game than just the pure sort of blocking and tackling that cybersecurity, the area we've mostly talked about. So the secure, survive, strike, mantra, in that secure bucket, that's mostly where all the things we traditionally talk about: zero trust, identity management, RMF reform. You'll hear a Navy's initiative of cyber ready. Those, for the most part, live in that bucket. And arguably, we all have a collective responsibility to do better there. And when I mean all, government, military, academia, commercial world, we all live in that space. But as we move to the right of that and get into the survive side, it was, hey, at the end of the day, the adversary gets a vote. There's a lot more to the attack surface of the Navy than just simply our information systems. Those are, albeit, the foundation for how we do most things. But then you start getting into weapon system security, defense critical infrastructure, operational technology that until recently, the last 5-ish years or so, we haven't really given that much attention to. And these are the things we have to do to learn to fight hurt. This is where the adversary is going to try to engage on the attack surface to degrade our ability to push logistics, fuel flow, keep the lights on, keep the HVAC running. And then when you get into the strike bucket, with the creation of U.S. Cybercom in 2010 and the standing up of the mission force in 2016 and the acknowledgement that offensive cyber operations is a legitimate military activity, well, it shouldn't surprise anybody that all the services, to include the Department of the Navy, is figuring out how to deliver effects in and through that space to degrade our adversary's ability to do its mission, to do its roles and functions. We look at sort of engaging the same kind of things. It's short, it's sweet, it's easily digestible. You hear it talked about within the halls of the Pentagon and other various communities, particularly the information warfare community. All in all, it's been successful. The follow-on will be this month. We are releasing finally the Department of the Navy's cyber strategy, which will be coming. And so the vision was really a primer to that strategy. And nesting with all the other documentation, the Department of Defense strategy, the Office of the President's cyber strategy, the Department of Defense cyber strategy. The Secretary will be endorsing the Navy's strategy here shortly.
What does the strategy mean for what the warfighter's doing at the tip of the spear, especially as we start to see the Navy potentially involved in a number of different places around the world?
Well, like all strategies, it just gives you something to point back to and say, look, at the end of the day, the Secretary puts out their vision, the direction, the things we want you to march towards. The sort of intent of the strategy is to look beyond things that we're always seen as traditional blocking and tackling, cyber security, open the aperture to talk about operational technology, to talk about the training and resourcing of our mission force, to talk about how we would better integrate with partners, the defense industrial base. Again, it's not just a ones and zeros enterprise IT document. This is really trying to open the aperture to look at the breadth and scope of all things that would really fall within a cyber discussion.
I give you a lot of credit. You waited less than 30 seconds to mention zero trust in a conversation about cyber in the United States military, so kudos to you for that. Zero trust is obviously important to the department. It's important to the federal government as a whole. What does that look like inside the Navy right now, Chris?
So arguably, I will give there's a difference between the principal cyber advisor and the chief information officer.
Sure.
That zero trust conversation really lives within the CIO organizations. And I really got to tip my hat starting under Aaron Weiss when he was the CIO, through things like COVID and the adoption of a lot of Microsoft products, carrying on with Jane Rathbun, who's the acting CIO for the Department of the Navy now. I really tip my hat to what the Navy did very quickly to adopt a lot of commercial technologies to get after these zero trust principles. Working with Randy Resnick, leading Thunderdome with all the zero trust initiatives. The Department of the Navy, I would argue, is probably leading in a lot of aspects at getting after sort of the core tenets of what zero trust is asking for. Now, we all know that zero trust is not a product. It is not a thing. It is not I push a button and roll this out. It's a combination of lots of things you have to do to get after the core pillars lined out in the zero trust strategy and the 140 some odd individual requirements you're trying to satisfy in it. But yeah, again, the Navy aggressively, most principally with Microsoft as a support and a lot of this, has helped us get to foundationally what they're looking for in the zero trust architecture. And I think we set the pace for the other service to look at to one degree or another. What
do you need to do in the Navy, and what have you done? You talked a little bit about the setup for COVID and so on, but what do you need to do to support the pillars of that cyberspace superiority vision, the secure, survive, strike, that maybe you haven't done yet or haven't done enough of yet?
Well, one of the most interesting things with the zero trust, let's say, initiative, has it mostly looks at enterprise IT, and there's a lot of vendors in this space that are building tools and products and services to satisfy those requirements. When you open the aperture to really, we'll talk about the survive piece of it, when you get into operational technology, the same principles that sort of underpinned a zero trust architecture within an enterprise IT space are fundamentally the same principles you would use in an operational technology, a deployed weapon system, defense critical infrastructure sitting on a shore facility somewhere. So again, the pillars and the principles line up nicely. Not in every instance does the technology that we're acquiring for an IT world always support the OT world. But fundamentally, we use a lot of the same language. And one of the most encouraging things that I found about the zero trust language is it finally has given us a common language to speak. Whether we're going to be talking about an IT environment or an OT environment, again, tools notwithstanding, those will be different in most instances. But fundamentally, the core principles that we would use over in the enterprise IT space are the core principles we would roll out to the OT space. And again, keep the language similar, keep the doctrine similar, keep some of the acquisition similar, right? The way that we would acquire these tools. And that's kind of the principle we're taking, particularly as you move over into the OT space, to not try and create a new language, but acknowledging not in every instance is that same IT solution going to work in my OT environment.
You're awash in data like every organization in the federal government. What data is useful to you and your colleagues in the cyber realm at the Navy?
All data. And that is a hard thing to digest, right? So I'm forgetting the actual clinical definition of data. Data is all things to process and disseminate, and video and communications, and everything is machine data. Data that we ingest through video and audio. All of that gets collected somewhere, gets stored somewhere. As we continue to use things like artificial intelligence to understand that data, it's how we begin to leverage it to do a whole variety of missions, functions, and tasks within the department. It's encouraging to see, the Secretary established offices like the Disruptive Capabilities Office, which is really sort of to augment or oversee a lot of things that were happening under Task Force 59 to do, autonomous systems. But when you talk about data, wow, right? I mean, in an environment, we're going to have more and more autonomous systems communicating with each other, having to learn the environment, everything from sea state to, recognizing what another ship or a buoy or an adversary at sea would look like. How we collect that, how we process it, how we disseminate it. We are just, beginning to scratch the surface on this, but the Navy is very aggressively moving in that direction.
Less than a minute left. I'm going to invite you to come back a year from now for the 2-year anniversary of the vision. What do you hope to achieve between now and then to continue to tee up the success that you've alluded to in this conversation?
It's really the department further and further embracing cyber as a war-fighting domain. And I know that sometimes that's a little hard to swallow when we talk to enterprise IT and the way we've always looked at information technology. But this is a war-fighting side of what we do, and not only are we going to look for ways to embrace things like zero trust to protect the the availability and security of our information and our data, but we're also going to be leveraging the ways that we are going to maneuver, deliver effects in and through this domain to professionalize in this as a service, to really embrace it as a core competency, in addition to aviation, subsurface, surface, Navy Special Warfare, Marines, amphibious assault. This is now part of that lexicon of what makes a service the service. And cyber is very much going to be embraced with that intent.
Chris, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Francis.
You can find a link to the Navy's Cyberspace Superiority Vision and read more about cyber in the Navy on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the Defense Department aims to replicate success with AI. FedGov Today with Francis Rose, back in a moment.
Don't miss the 7th Annual Appian Government Conference on November 29th in Tysons, Virginia, to learn how you can use low-code and AI process automation to empower your workforce, enhance citizen engagement, and reimagine service delivery. Register now at appiangovernment.com.
Welcome back. Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks says one goal of the new Replicator initiative is driving artificial intelligence innovation in the Pentagon. Hicks says speed in innovation is critical to stay ahead of the country's potential adversaries. Rob Carey is president of Cloudera Government Solutions. He's former Deputy Chief Information Officer at DoD. Rob, welcome. It's great to talk to you. This revolution that we're seeing across government, what should people be doing inside the building and in civilian agencies to really prepare for what's ahead of us?
Learn.
Yeah.
So embrace this technology. There have been 3 words in IT in the last 25 years that have had this profound of a change on the landscape. One is cyber. If you recall, if you're old like me, you remember it was information assurance. It was just something that somebody on the staff did. Then it became cyber. It became forefront of everyone's thoughts. Then came cloud. So now everybody, the new storage compute model is cloud computing. Vivek Kundra, 2009, cloud first. So everything is now shifting, and now it's AI. So what is, AI is that artificial intelligence. There are tools that are out there that you can play with today. You can go on ChatGPT, other language learning models, and figure out what to do with this thing. But to harness it for actual use, for support of mission, is really about learning and understanding so that you can accelerate your mission as DepSecDef is desired.
What does one look for? What does one need to learn in order to be an effective practitioner to recognize opportunities to use AI?
So it sounds silly, but Francis, the first thing is, do you know what problem you're trying to solve? I mean, that sounds trivial, but it's not. And then this is all about the data. So the data associated with that problem set, right? Organize it, clean it, and then most importantly, trust it. Right? This is a big deal. Do you trust the data? I've said this many times, maybe even on your show. We trust everything that shows up on our computer screen, right? It's real, it's live, it's good. Well, that's not necessarily true. Mm-hmm. So you must trust the data that you're going to now put into a vector database to actually implement AI algorithms to produce a mission result that is repeatable and gives you the answers that you want. Mm-hmm. So the idea is really to take a step back and then move forward with a plan. You can't jump into this. People sometimes think that because I can get on ChatGPT in 5 minutes, and I did that. I printed some questions out here, and it just keeps going. Mm-hmm. And the answers are, I give them a C+, right? So you can't just take that and run with it. You actually have to take that, go, I need to tweak something.
Mm-hmm. That's it kind of gets at the core of the differentiator that people keep talking about, which is this is not going to replace people. AI is going to be a tool for people to use to do their jobs better.
That's exactly right. In my mind, what is the most powerful force on earth is a machine-enabled human, right? Now we have a more powerful version of that can be brought to bear to solve complex problems. Are there places where lower level activities, maybe in cyber, that you could run and screen something out through the machine. Yes, you could. But you have to think the other side is, I now can take a really informed man-machine interface plus a human to solve the problem. So that we're now at another level of capability, which is, I think, so cool.
How does one go about doing what you're suggesting, which is analyzing mission need and then applying potential solutions through artificial intelligence, rather than, oh, let's go get some AI because AI sounds cool and people are doing a lot with it. But how does one look at a problem and think of a potential solution? Oh, this is something where artificial intelligence might be a viable application.
So you have to study, define the problem and its scope, find the data appropriate to that problem, determine a language learning model, either build one or use one, and then starts the work, right, to then perfect it. Generative AI is all the rave. AI in the form of machine learning has been around for a while, but now generative AI, I can speak to something, I get an interface back out. So this is about start and then learn and get better at it. And the people that understand this, data scientists, data engineers, are like gold hen's teeth. They just aren't laying around on every corner. And so and they're starting to come out of colleges now, which is very cool. But there's not enough of them. Just like in cyber, when cyber became a thing, everybody wanted to have a cyber engineer. Well, there weren't any laying around. So they're now coming out of universities with degrees and understand this. So I think that the DoD, the other agencies, they really have to sit and work on this, perfect it, and then move forward.
Rob Carey, it's always great to talk to you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
You can read more about AI in the Defense Department and the Replicator initiative in particular at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, data is at the heart of modernizing the government's people process. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Here's Anil Carmel from RegScale on innovation in government, FedRAMP, presented by Carahsoft.
Well, ultimately, what we're seeing in industry, which FedRAMP has helped take a hand in, is leveraging automation and standards, right? So FedRAMP had a hand and partnered with NIST in creating this new standard called the Open Security Controls Assessment Language, right? A machine-readable standard to submit and assess compliance packages, right, as opposed to manually having to stare and compare what changed in these documents. So leveraging standards and automation is the way that we're going to be able to get more cloud service providers authorized faster and deliver tangible business value.
To learn more, go to fedgovtoday.com/FedRAMP. Welcome back. Leaders at the Office of Personnel Management say they'll use data to drive decision-making about the federal workforce. The agency's working to give other agencies data and tools to make workforce decisions too. Robert Shea is Chief Executive Officer of Gov Navigators. He's former Associate Director at the Office of Management and Budget, former Commissioner on the Commission on Evidence-Based Policymaking. Robert, welcome. It's great to talk to you again. What do you take away from these 4 goals that OPM has set for its data driving initiative? Being a model employer, human-centered design, improving the customer experience, and using data-driven solutions.
So that's great to see. I think the OPM is on its own transformation journey, and they are trying to really unlock a lot of the value from the data they've got, share it with agencies so that they can together improve human capital management across federal government, which, as you know, has been one of the top challenges, if not the top challenge, facing government agencies for many years.
As an expert on improving performance all across the federal government, what does that look like? What are the outcomes that one wants to measure in order to determine then how to use that data either at the OPM level or at the agency level to drive the outcomes that you want?
What a very nice premise of your question. So, I mean, there are two sides to this coin. One is the quality of the data. They got to make sure that the data is valid, it's accurate and timely. And that's what those standards are all about, making sure that everybody's working from a common set of data standards, that they are, that the data is available when they need it, and that it accurately reflects what it's supposed to reflect. The other side of the coin is, what is it showing us? To what extent are employees engaged? And if not, where do we need to focus our energies to get them more engaged? How is the hiring process, which perennial problem, is it improving? Where are the bottlenecks in the process, and what do we need to do to fix it? And then where are performance issues? Performance management has been a critical challenge facing agencies. We need to focus where performance isn't where it should be, take action to fix those challenges.
All the things that you mentioned, I don't think it's a coincidence, are pillars, tenets of the president's management agenda, not just for this administration, the previous administration, the ones before that. Those have kind of been themes all throughout the history of the PMA. What progress do you see happening since the time that you were in government up to where we are today in those areas or others?
I think I would generally say progress has been inadequate. But I give a lot of credit, and I think there's a lot of magic in the fact that the CDO councils, the head of the CDO council happens to be the OPM CDO, Ted Kauck. He has set out a data strategy that intends to transform OPM's culture into a data-driven culture, provide products that are useful to agencies, to transform its own technology, modernize the way it's doing business, and then improve the governance of data so that it really does fulfill the needs of agency customers. I think if you're in the data business in a federal agency and you took OPM's data strategy, basically changed the words to your own, you'd have a major head start in transforming your own data culture. So I really do think I'm pinning a lot of my hopes on the work that Ted is doing, not only at OPM, but at the CDO Council.
Well, and Ted's great partner in what he's doing at OPM is the CIO there, Guy Cavallo. Guy's going to be a guest on FedGov Today in the next couple of weeks to talk about what he's doing transformationally from an IT perspective to provide the underpinning.
So are you plugging another show on my segment?
Of course I am. I'm going to plug a show anytime I get a chance to plug a show. But what Guy is doing there is providing the underpinning for what Ted is working on, and it's interesting to me that their structures they don't have the typical CIO-CDO relationship. They're peers at the table as far as providing that structure in order to get that data out throughout the agency and to other agencies.
And that's precisely what was intended when the Commission on Evidence-Based Policymaking recommended the establishment of a CDO. We didn't necessarily expect them to be rolled up under the CIO, but really to be the one who's going to transform data that the agency needs into an asset so that it can improve mission accomplishment.
All right, I talked about the anniversary of Chris Cleary's Cybersecurity Superiority Vision, another anniversary that I know is very dear to you, 5 years of the Evidence Act now behind us. What does that look like in your view 5 years on since the passage of that? Has the vision of it been fulfilled or on the way to being fulfilled, do you think?
I think so. Remember, the bill that codified a lot of the Commission's recommendations are in the Foundations for Evidence-Based Policymaking Act, and it's called Foundations for a reason. We're laying the foundation for greater evidence-based policymaking, decision-making across government. We've established a lot of governance. We've launched a lot of evidence building. Our friend Nick Hart, head of the Data Foundation, and Jason Saul, who's executive director of the Center for Impact Sciences at the University of Chicago, just released an article called Evidence 2.0. Coincidentally, it's all about the data. So we've done this evidence building. We should be able to release a bunch of data and evidence for use in decision making. So we need to really check where we are. Do we have the data we need to make these decisions? Is the data timely and accurate? And what is it telling us? Or are we going to share it with our entire ecosystem so that we can all learn together and accelerate, improve performance?
All right, you ask those questions as rhetorical questions. I'll ask them as direct questions. Is it your sense, at least, that right now in the government we have the data that that government leaders need to make decisions? Is it timely and accurate, and so on? So
the answer is no, no, no. But we've come a long way, and you know, we started the conversation from the vantage point of human capital. The strategy that Ted and OPM have laid out really do get us on that path. But the government is sitting on a treasure trove of data. It is not as accurate as it should be. It's not governed as well as it should be. We don't have the opportunity to link disparate data sets to really unlock a lot of the insights that I know are hidden under there. There are a lot of initiatives underway to do that. So I just think, I do think we're on the precipice of real innovation in data management and evidence-based decision-making.
Understanding that the data is maybe not as clean and accurate as it could be, is there a risk to not starting? Is there a risk to waiting until the data is exactly how the organization at hand would like it to be?
Yeah, you need to move out. The best way you're going to get improved data is to use it, try to use it, find the flaws in it, and fix it. But Nick and Jason point out in their article that nobody really has perfect data when they're making decisions. They need to look prospectively at what are the trends telling you, where are you most likely to get the biggest bang for your buck, what does the data tell you about that, and providing that it's sufficiently reliable, then it should facilitate better and better decision making.
Robert Shea, it's great to talk to you as always, my friend.
Thanks for having me back.
You can read more about OPM's data efforts and find a link to the article Robert referenced on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Here's Joe Boy, system engineer at Palo Alto Networks, from AI in Depth.
Imagine you sitting behind a keyboard, freshly new into the space, and you have a co-pilot that helps guide you through the process of ensuring your environment is secure, setting up the right policies to make sure that what you do set up is going to be effective, and getting those recommendations from the AI to say, hey, this is where we think you should best put your tools and resources to get the best out of it, right? And so that's one way in which we see it being a force multiplier.
To watch the whole program, go to fedgovtoday.com/AI. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, ServiceNow will host Modern Logistics and Maintenance, end-to-end automated asset management. I'll be your host for the event Wednesday, November 8th, live at ServiceNow headquarters in Vienna, Virginia. You'll learn how the federal government can manage assets more efficiently. You can learn more about the event and register for it at fedgovtoday.com/events. FedGov Today returns next Sunday morning at 10:30 with the Chief Information Officer of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks very much for watching. See you next Sunday. Have a great week.
Don't miss the 7th Annual Appian Government Conference on November 29th in Tysons, Virginia, to learn how you can use low-code and AI process automation to empower your workforce, enhance citizen engagement, and reimagine service delivery. Register now at appiangovernment.com.